welcome everybody. This is Magic Monday. My name's Mark Abardi. What a wonderfully transformational weekend. I hope everybody had a wonderful resurrecting time of consciousness. I've got some wonderful guests this week, and today is a wonderful kickoff. We have Emma Kenny from the UK, social change agent extraordinaire. I did want to say, everyone do a live stream, a watch party share if you can. On Facebook, on my stream, you can see the event, and underneath, little watch party, hit it, share. There you go. Bob's your uncle. Emma, hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nice connecting face to face.
Exactly. Thanks for being on so late with us. I know you're in the UK. It's about 10 p.m. there, right? Yeah,
it's fine. I always do live meditations till this point, so this is my normal.
Super. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you're doing at the moment.
So, I've been muted.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just shut me up before I've even started. I mean, why don't you? Like, I don't like to be rude. I mean, I've not even said anything.
I know. What can I say? It's a British thing, you know. It's a power game. Established. No, please forgive. I muted the wrong person. I've done that before. Emma, okay. Tell us about yourself, your work, your passion.
Okay. So, I mean, my passion is therapy and people. Like, I've been working in therapy since I was like in my early 20s. So psychology initially, then went into several disciplines of therapy. Then about 13, 14 years ago, fell into the media, which was really nice because the media is a way of getting mass amounts of information to massive amounts of people that you wouldn't necessarily obviously get an option to do. I think that the past probably 5 years has been quite significant for me in the fact that I'm very lucky and I work on one of the UK's biggest daytime shows, that's given me kind of a really lovely audience with the cyber world. I really love social media. I think it's amazing. I think that it gets loads of really negative stuff, but I think it can be like a really non-toxic environment where it can really enhance your life. I work with crime a lot, so trauma was a big part of my therapy, so I do a lot of crime documentaries. I write for the biggest magazine in the UK, and on top of that I have my own radio show, which is still a surprise because I can't pronounce any of the composers, but I feel really grateful for that kind of stuff because it brings me what I really want. So what I really want is a lot of social change regarding the way that we deal with mental illness, and to tell the truth about the way that I think society has been made to conform in a certain way, and to wake people up. I guess that would be my major passion, apart from the obvious, which are like raising boys and having lots of animals and being plant-based and all those things that matter to me. So yeah, that would be me in a nutshell, really.
Nice. I like that. So what are you finding, most going on at the moment for you? You're in the UK, obviously, everywhere's going through this whole lockdown thing. What's your kind of take on it? What's your take on what's going on and
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know that when you start talking about anything that isn't part of the main narrative, you're considered a conspiracy theorist because that's always the way that they silence people. So if you disagree with the major belief system, you cause to some degree a problem, and the way to deal with the problem is to create a solution. The solution is you're crazy. That's the way it is. And I get all of that. But for me, I think what's really interesting and what I'm talking about, on my channels and certainly with people that I speak to on a regular basis is if something doesn't feel right, in our society, I think we've been told to almost second guess ourselves. So like you hear information, you don't believe the information, but because the information's there, you don't go with your gut instinct that says something doesn't feel right, something smells off. So at the moment, I think what's happening is I absolutely believe that there's, an infection. I think that it's a common infection. I think that chances are a lot of us have probably had it for a long time. I think that like influenza, people who are sick and dying and old definitely have problems with those kind of situations occurring. I think what's really problematic is fear, because even if you think about it on a narrative where there's this kind of minor infection that's causing minor amounts of death compared to infection levels, they believe that half of Finland have it. Well, they've had nothing compared to the percentages that you'd expect death-wise. So to me, it's about an exercise as well of conformity. It's an exercise of mass control by social media. That's really interesting to me because we are social media. We control social media, human beings, yeah? we do it, but we're mass policing ourselves right now. And I think that I know what's happened before. You know, I know about Hitler. I know about what happens when we start ratting on our neighbours and we conform to a belief system that we don't really connect with. And that worries me, that there is a disturbing trend to almost mimic things that I think were really bad for us. I don't think that that's the narrative, that they're trying to do something terrible to humanity in that respect, but I believe that there is an undercurrent of fake narrative to perpetuate something that potentially is about seeing how we manifest control in our society these days. Or even if it's on a less dark level, what I think is happening is that we're seeing the power of too many voices who have one belief system trampling on the thing that's really important about being human, which is inquisitive behavior and curiosity. For me, it's the most powerful moment in my life where I realize I'm getting told, for example, that I need to be quiet because of my career. Well, that just makes me go, well, I'm going to be really loud now. Right. Because if you're telling me that I have to be afraid of my beliefs, then if I silence them, I'm complicit. So I think that, you know, on a big scenario, I don't know enough about what's really happening. I think it's a massive overreaction. I think we're all going to go into economic crisis. I think that we have to have a better acknowledgement and acceptance of death. I think that death is part of the natural process. I think it's really healthy for us to identify with it and understand it. And it's okay. You're going to die. Personally, I don't think you die at all. I think you have a consciousness that continues, whatever that is. And I welcome that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about death. I mean, you know, death, a lot of people think death is death, like, oh, dead. But really, death is about any sort of change, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a really interesting one to pose. I suppose that our whole life is always about learning to let go, but not necessarily having the understanding of how to do that comfortably. So I think that the Western narrative is to hold on to things even when they're bad for us, because there are things.
Right.
So
it's about ownership, isn't it?
Right. It's our territory, it's our ownership. So a shedding.
It's my anger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a shedding is something that a lot of us struggle with. Whereas for me, I think that I learned really early on through trauma that if you don't shed, you stay stuck. So I think that through my own experiences growing up, and certainly like losing my dad to suicide last year, what that did was help me to once again reinforce my understanding of what I consider is real versus what I consider is fake. And like for me, I do believe in consciousness continuing. I fully believe that there is something existential about our experience. I do believe that I'm connected to my father still. I don't have a religion, so therefore I can't say that I believe in any particular Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. But what I think those all talk about is the thing that really they are all talking about, which is a sense that the me, the it, the I, it's something bigger than body. And I'm okay with whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but I'm okay with it. And I think that if everybody started to use this time now to go, why am I so afraid of illness and death? Like, why? You know, we really do ourselves a lot of good, personally.
Or like where are my edges? Where do I, where's the end of me? Where's my edge?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about death or dying or sickness as terrifying and the absolute blackness and darkness that, you know, it's painted in Western culture a lot of the time, then it sounds pretty horrific. But if you see it in a different way, like I see life as just incredibly gifted. I think it's experiential, and I think that some of us get lucky. Like I always think I was born working class, we didn't have money, but I was born in the UK to parents who, for the faults that we all have, loved me, with siblings that I still get on with really well. And therefore I won the lottery of life just by being born into those circumstances. I get that not everyone's as lucky as just that ordinariness that I experienced and inhabited. However, I still think just being alive, no matter what, has just this incredible potential. I never lose sight when I'm having a bad day, and I'm sure that people who are listening to you and who know you, they do the same. a bit like when you were doing your Uber driving,
Right.
and you were using it as an option to kind of progress yourself and to take the actual experience of being an Uber driver and make it into something tangible and concrete within your own development. So then it's not an Uber driving at all. That is secondary to the self-discovery and the experience of meeting people, right? I think that is the powerful thing about life. So if I feel overwhelmed, I go outside and I look up at the sky and I'm like, the birds really are not they're not struggling with this shit. You know, they're just flying, you know, the squirrels in the trees, they're not struggling with this shit. This is like something that humans have created to struggle with. Like, this is not a struggle. Listen, guys, coronavirus is not a struggle. It's just part of Mother Nature. What I've got a problem with at the moment, and sorry to make light of this, but I feel like I'm in some rabbit hole a little bit, where people are literally walking around going, guys, oh my God, guys, have you heard of this thing? There's this thing called fucking death. Like, there's a thing called death. Like, nobody has thought of, you know, and it's not that I shouldn't know that people struggle with it, but it's this profound thing that people are trying to escape the inevitable. Whereas instead, if you confront the inevitable and you accept it and you bless it, it's just not that scary anymore. It's just not.
Right, absolutely. But people don't necessarily know how to do that. It's like, you know, your bird comment reminded me of The Life of Brian, you know, where he explained to people.
Brilliant film.
Take the birds, for example. Oh, he's having a go at the birds now. No, they don't have jobs, do they? Anyway, so...
Such a good film.
It's brilliant. Life of Brian.
Life of Brian.
But you know, that notion of people... taking whatever scenario they're in and then giving their heart to it as the complete experience that it is. Like, not that there's anywhere to get to. That, like, I have to go somewhere now and get more better in order for me to enjoy my life.
Exactly. Listen, the biggest and almost the most powerful myth that the capitalist system has taught human beings is to want. And almost to say to those people who want the bigger house, the nicer car, the harder job, the more money, that, yeah, this is it. You know, it's like in your country, you call it the American dream. In our country, it's just kind of capitalism, right? Full stop, yeah? And there's nothing wrong. Listen, there is nothing wrong with wanting a level of comfort in your life. And you know what? One of the things as you get older is your subjective experience is yours. And I'm not there to judge people who actually, that's what they want, a Maserati and a 15-bedroomed house and to work 90 hours a week achieving it. You know, that's not me. I work smarter, not harder. I don't need more than a few rooms to live in. I certainly don't need a car that's expensive because it gets me to the same place. Everybody has their own experience of what makes their reality. But certainly for me, what you're talking about there on that mindful practice level, which is all about attending to the present, like if you have the ability and opportunity to attend to the present, i.e. to not get fixated on tomorrow and the next week and the next year because you have no power over it, to not ruminate about the past because you have no power over it, to fully engage in the present, and to actually be fully accepting and gratitude bearing of that present, even when it's painful.
Right.
Because that to some degree is something that we've taught people, that if it's painful, escape it. Well, no, like if it's painful, hear it, listen to it, attend it, process it.
Honor it.
Yeah, honor it, bless it, be grateful for it. Because one day you won't get to feel, like, even if you have my basis of consciousness continuing, I don't think that's human in any way. I think what's human is what we feel now. So whatever you have in this moment, it's yours, it's unique, and it's something that is powerfully gratitude bearing if you allow it to be. And it's not even that I'm doing it in this kind of idealistic way, because I think what people tend to do is they tend to say, well, Emma, you know what, that's really idealistic, or, you know, they give you these ideas that you're kind of left field and a hippie. I used to live on a commune. I come from that background. I do eat, you know, a certain way because I believe that life is imperative and I would never kill anything. It's not my job to do that. So I do have those biases. I have those biases, absolutely. But actually everything that I say is grounded in empirical research. It's research. So everything I say is based clinically. So I can show you why meditation and mindful practice is effective for changing neural pathways. I can demonstrate it on a brain scan. I can show you how reframing negative thoughts into something of gratitude can change the neural pathways. These are not things that I can't demonstrate on an MRI. I can do that. So I think that what I try to do is always, in the general public, balance all my thoughts that seem a little bit spiritual with things that are based in evidence. I think that helps.
Yeah, where science meets spirituality. That's the...
Right. I mean, absolutely. Listen, research that blew me away when I was a student years ago, and they'd done this double-blind study on basically people with serious cancers. And the deal was that they got 50 churches to pray for half the group. And the people who were being prayed for had no idea they were being prayed for and had no religious intent. And they, results-wise, wiped out the non-prayed for group. It wasn't even their need to be prayed. It wasn't them. It was the energy of others, right? It was the power. And I remember just thinking, man, like, we have to stop thinking about body and personal and me. We have to start thinking about the existential consciousness of connection and being, because that's where the power lies.
It's like a mycelial web. It's like a quantum mycelial web that underlines the makeup of consciousness.
I agree.
You know, the thing about being positive about your current scenario, a lot of people think that there's this notion that we're fooling ourselves, that we're tricking ourselves, that, you know, you might well just go and look at everything positively, but then you are hiding from the truth. And I think very much in the UK, that element is there, and even to a quite extent in America. How do we help people to understand that this honoring of the now is not a trick that is avoiding anything? In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's accepting all of the things. How do we help people to understand that it's acceptance and not an avoidance?
Well, I think that if any of those people who question our issue with being in the here and now, if they can just run ahead 2 weeks and let me know what the lottery numbers are, or go back and change a really symbolic death that occurred for me, I'll buy into the fact that it's worth ruminating over both of those. But until that can happen, the only thing that they have is the here and now. And by buying in to voices that are firstly not theirs, secondly, let's be honest, when it comes down to capitalist states, your economies run on money, and the voices in the news are there to tell us a narrative. And if you believe that, you have a right to do that. But you've got to realize that your thoughts are not your own. So what you do with things like mindful practice, as you know, is you do things like body scan, you look at emotional prompts, you present yourself with any kind of formal or informal mindful practice, from going out for a walk with nature or doing some yoga. But it's all about saying, like, how does my body feel? What area of my body feels like, you know, I need to attend to it? You know, what are those thoughts that keep coming through my mind when I'm trying to just allow myself that space? You know, it tells you what you need to hear. And the thing is, I think we spend so much time lost in our conscious voice because we're reading so much and we're hearing so much. I tell my clients constantly, the critical voice that you hear in your head, it's not yours. Like, the critical voice in your head that causes you so much pain, it's the voice of your parents, your teachers, the newspapers, the people at work, the people who told you nasty things about yourself. And that's the worst voice you'll ever listen to. But because the other side of it is, after a while, that conscious becomes unconscious programming. So the reason that it's important that people listen to the here and now and the positivity is, the more that you practice it, the more positive you become. And also the bigger picture is, why would you spend any moment being worried about something that reality-wise isn't going to affect you? I mean, that's reality-wise. It's not affecting you right now. Even if it affects you in a week, it's not affecting you right now. So you're losing the very health and opportunity to experience the present fundamentally that you're blessed with, because you're giving yourself away to the future that hasn't happened, might never happen. And I think that it teaches us to be afraid. And courage for me is the antidote to so much. It's the antidote to so much. It's the antidote to vulnerability. It's the antidote to fragility. It's the antidote to so many emotional pains, like courage. And when you feel scared, that's what you're being taught. And right now, people are scared. And I don't see that that makes you withdraw. For me, it's like confront. You know, when I'm afraid, I'm like, I'm not going to let myself be afraid. I'm going to be really brave now, and I'm going to go and stand in that line of fire. And yeah, I'm going to feel dead uneasy, and I'm going to feel really scared, like when I get warned about things that I'm saying. Yeah, of course, when somebody tells me you are really potentially going to ruin your career, like I would be really weird if I didn't go, Jesus, really? There's that moment where you're like, oh my God, take everything down that says anything about this, that, or the other. And then it's that if I go with that, I become part of that really, really big problem, which is fear. So instead I'm like, okay, feel it, and then bless it, and then say, fuck it, this is who I am. And then when doing that, it reassures me that I am authentic. And we talk about being authentic a lot. And we pay lip service to a lot of this modern day idea, which is all based, obviously, as you said, in much more spiritual Eastern, you know, all of these things. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, like when people have got tattoos and they go, believe. And I want to go, what? Like, it's like my inquisitive nature is like, is it really? Is it profound, or is it just, it looks cool and kind of you read The Secret or something? And it's like, there's that bit of me that's like, you know, like my tattoo is a tattoo about my father's suicide, and I know why it's there, and I can tell you the story and the narrative, right? Because it's profound. And I kind of think that authenticity is profound. It's hard. It's consistently evolving. You're never there. You're always tripping yourself up. But it's where the good stuff lies, and it's always in the present. Always in the present. Mm.
It's a difficult one for the present, because what would you say to the preppers and the people who are like, you know, hey, listen, I don't want big government to take over and blah, blah, blah. So I've got to have my prep bag. I mean, do you not have a prep bag? No, I mean, I don't either, but I would like to have a prep bag. I mean,
there's a bit of me, you know, that there's a bit of me that I always like people who have aha moments. Like, I think everybody deserves aha moments in their life. And I just think that all those survivalists are like, they've got, you know, they've spent a long time defending their beliefs and being criticised. And they must all have got together and been like, we're not book buying. We know where we're getting our meds from. And there's a part of me that actually really celebrates the fact that they've been unwilling to toe the narrative that's been portrayed by the media for many, many years. So I think that whilst they seem to be futurists constantly, actually part of it is that they are so desiring to continue living in the present that they've prepped enough so that they can continue to do so. So theirs is a really kind of, it's on its topsy-turvy side, but I get it. I think that their fear genuinely about government and government control, yeah, I think they're probably onto something really obvious there. I mean, I think that for a very long time, you don't have to be very engaged in reading about and listening to alternative theories to realise that there are much more deeper voices who control this world. You know, it's not our presidents. And I think that, you know, I've always, with respect to you guys, and I don't want to be negative about your president, because I appreciate that, you know, Trump is
not quite my president yet. I mean, I am still British. I have applied for my American citizenship. Yeah, so Trump is watching.
You know, it's very easy for me to spout the narrative that I've been taught, which is that he's crazy, he's a misogynist, and all of those things. But slowly, as much as I'm never going to be right, I'm like not right at all in my views. But what I do kind of see with him, which is really weird and really kind of interesting for me, is he just doesn't give a shit about what he's told by other people. And I might not be able to synergize with him on lots of levels, but that man, he can't be controlled. And I'm sure that people behind the scenes who are used to being able to manipulate and get people to Epstein's Island, and he just won't do it. And I've gone from thinking that he was this really strange man to actually realizing that I've been played. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with policies and all that, because that's not really where my interest base is. I'm not that political in that respect. But what I see is that they must be panicking, because he's like, calls out everything.
He's a wild card.
He's a wild card, and he wasn't meant to happen. And that's the other thing I was going to say. What I love about the British public and the American public is you can sell us a lot of stuff, You can tell us a lot of stuff, and people are buying into it now. Like, everyone's buying into it to some degree with this coronavirus stuff. But we don't do it for a long time. Like, so Brexit for us, listen, it doesn't matter whether I agreed with Brexit or otherwise. And it doesn't matter that loads of people are offended by it. What matters is it wasn't meant to happen, and it happened. And I think that Trump's the same. So you think that the public are controlled, but we're really not controlled. And even though there will always be darkness, and this is when I work in tantric, and when I work in transcendental psychological work, one of the things that I always talk about is seeking the good, seeking kindness. It is always harder. Like, it's easier to get, like, let's take from Tantra, like the idea of sexual connection being a thing of great power and source of good, right? Mm-hmm. Or you can gratify yourself in the most horrendous of ways, but it's gratifying. And it's easier to gratify yourself in really negative ways, with your fantasies that are negative, with your predilections that might be negative. I'm not saying, by the way, that if anybody's got paraphilia listening, that I'm judging you. I'm not. I'm saying that think about the difference between energy that's negative and that uses you in shameful ways, and think about the one that's positive and takes work. It's a lot easier to get the negative stuff. You can go out to a sex party, or you can have an orgy, you can do all of that stuff. It's easy to do, but often it isn't very reinforcing. It doesn't necessarily make you feel that good. And I think that it causes energy that isn't that good for you in your life. But actually being in a relationship, you know, with 1 or 2 or 3 people that you love and care for, and takes bloody work, and you have to keep working on your connection and your intimacy. Right. And even though it's harder, it's better, and it's stronger, and it's more confirming. And that's the thing in life. When it's harder, like always trying to be nice, always being good, working really hard spiritually, it's not easy, because there are all these things that want to disrupt it and interrupt it. You know, from drinking loads of alcohol, which, you know, does feel good temporarily, to eating a whole tub of Ben & Jerry's, even though it's not great for you. The instant reward often outweighs the long-term attempt to be a good human being. And I'm all for the working really hard. And I ask myself a question every time I take an action. And the question is always the same, which is this the right one? It might not be easy, but is it the right one?
You see, there's a slight paradox going on here, because we're talking about being in the moment and being present, which I'm totally with you on everything. You know, guilt from the past is an illusion. You couldn't have done anything different because it didn't happen. So everything that happened was supposed to happen. So,
and it formed you. It formed you.
Right. And so then here you are in the present, and we're saying, okay, be in the present. But also we're talking about long-term benefits, like having a deep dive relationship has a long-term solidifying relationship, rather than going onto Pornhub and you know, having some fun there, which is skyrocketed in the corona thing. So but the Pornhub one could be said to be being more present with your immediate needs, whereas the deciding to have a quiet moment with your partner to discuss strategy for the future or blah, 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 that's more a long-term goal. So how do we blend that, be present, but also be aware that what you're doing in the present has that for the future? Has that.
So being present and being mindful in no way denies accountability and responsibility. You still have accountability and responsibility, and how you are in the moment depicts how you will be in the future. So the actual action of knowing that the way I act in the here and now is present and real in the moment, but underpins the foundation of, understandably, what I create and carve in the future. I think that the most powerful need in life is to be accountable and fully present and fully responsible for who you are and what you do and what you cause. And even when you give that example about going on Pornhub, like, I don't think or judge anyone with what they do with their body, right? That's their body. I don't have an issue with sex workers. It's completely up to them. I write for Killing Kittens, which is an adult sex kind of group in the UK, because I'm their vanilla mainstream person who just writes all the stuff that's like more acceptable. But I'm totally okay with it. But what I always think are, even with porn, you get this massive disparity. You get the pretty woman masturbating in front of a camera, you know, guys jerking off or woman's jerking off to her and enjoying it in that way. It's kind of like a more intimate experience of just that person presenting something that could be almost considered art. And then you get a woman being gangbanged by 15 different guys, basically looking like she's in pain, but told to enjoy it. And you know that is dark. It's dark because it's evocative and it's desensitizing, and it means that you can't connect in the same visceral and cerebral way with your partner. And it's just proven, because I work with men who need to desensitize themselves to that extreme constantly, or people just legal. Like, we legally have in our community sites that are okay with having things like rape drama or just legal or young teen, which is like meant to be an 18-year-old who looks really young. But what we're actually saying is, if you have a predilection to have sex with kids, this is where you come. And if you are watching that, then that's your first step into your gateway of whether it's responsible. So I see that everything in the present is powerfully connected to everything, both from past and future. So it's where your power is, because like you said, your past has formed you. Like, that whole idea of ever wanting to shift and change anything. Of course, if I could go back and stop my dad killing himself, of course I'd want to do it, right? But I have never known as much about myself since his death. I have never, ever grown in the way that I've grown. I knew nothing about death by suicide, even though I thought I did. I thought I was really connected, really empathic, really compassionate, blah, blah, blah. And now I look back and I want to go down and see everybody who lost their child through homicide, everybody who went through a situation where a child or an adult killed themselves. And I want to just go, I am so sorry. What the fuck? What were my platitudes? What was I saying? And I want to go back and say, I get it now. And I will never work with any other human in the way that I would have worked before. I am profoundly changed. And I really am grateful to my father for allowing me that journey, albeit that it's a journey that's a very painful one. It's changed and shaped me. And I also think that it's reaffirmed that sense for me that it's okay that I'm going to die. Like, it's cool. It's like part of my power is being okay with it. And I definitely think that anybody who works hard in the present to be fully responsible and accountable for who they are, and to care deeply and inquisitively about the people that they share their life with, that is definitely my happy place, and content place, at least. Not maybe happy, that's maybe more occasional.
Yeah, there's like maybe it's a deep acceptance, a kind of heartfelt recognition that we are alive, and as being alive and being present, one can experience all the universe right now, rather than trying to worry about how the universe is going to be more or less perfect later on.
Right.
Am I going to? What's it? And it wasn't perfect then. It's like, look, it's perfect now. With all the shit and all the drama and all the trauma that's happening now, it's as perfect now as it needs to be, or as it can be ever.
Yeah, it's surrendering. I always think the word surrender is a really great word, and I use that all the time. I think that we see it sometimes as submitting. I don't think it's submitting. Surrendering is just kind of like breathing in and accepting and being okay. And there is something really unique about having gone through traumatic loss, because you really think in those early days that you can't survive it. And then you have this really beautiful awakening, which is that you're born to withstand it and you're born to grow from it. And trauma is the same per se. Like, we have a lot of mentally unwell people who are, it's personalized. You've got bipolar, you have dissociative identity disorder, you have schizophrenia, schizoid affective disorder. And I want to like say, like, you don't have anything. You know, you might have a brain disease like schizophrenia, for example, but you were created. You know, we can say it's DNA, but actually what we know is you might have a predisposition for anything, but there's an activation, and like the activation is usually based in trauma. It's usually based in something really dramatically painful for the psyche and a fracturing within it. And then we say, well, it's you've got the problem, you need to sort it out. And I'm like, no, the way that humans have always existed until very recent time is tribe. It's tribe. So that's it. That's the key. You know, if we had our return to community-based love and sharing and connection, we would answer so many of those issues. So, for example, if you're living in a community that's not a cult, you know, as in, you know, I'll take the word cult because there are communities that get told they're cults because they follow a certain path, but actually there's no harm, it's love-based, it's caring, and I don't think that that personally is anywhere near cult. I associate like cult with something like Koresh, you know, where there was a negativity.
The disempowerment of individual.
Yeah, and even with Koresh, with respect, you know, we only know what we were told, and we don't know the kind of levels of threat that they were experiencing and so on and so forth. So, you know, you can never see the full picture. Tribe is so powerful because you see in like communities, we've got one in the UK, it's a religious community. They have like one person in the whole of their community. It's existed for a long, long time on antidepressants. And the rest of them who had mental illnesses are cared for and cradled in the community. And therefore the cradling creates freedom. And I think we have so many answers. And yet, because everything's about live in a box, drive in a box, work in a box, die in a box, that we've bought into it, but we all know it's wrong. Like, I don't know one human being, when I say, do you think that we've got this world right? Unless they're incredibly rich. And then if they're incredibly rich, they struggle because they don't feel a deep sense of gratitude. And then so they've got a cross to bear, right? They've got a cross to bear. But when you bring it down to the basis, if I said to people, what would make you happy? They're always the same. Well, you know, if I was surrounded by people who like I connected with, if I felt like I didn't have to worry about where my food was coming from, if I could maybe do things that made me feel creative, and you're like, so basically what we were meant to do. And we disassociate ourselves so hugely from nature that we alienate ourselves from being human. And so I think that, and I hope that as consciousness expands and awakening begins right now, that's feeling that everyone has in their gut right now in the present, that something's just not quite right, is we start to do more with it.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's look, like nature has that rhythm. Nature has the rhythm that we were in, that has that community synergy, that the trees are synergistic with the fauna, with the squirrels and the birds. And we evolved beyond that into this concrete jungle where we took out of ourselves the mathematics of nature and the harmony. Right, so now we're talking about, you said beautifully that trauma creates a kind of an awareness, like a potential growth. And I talk about where there's amount of death, there's a subsequent amount of growth. So if you have a lot of death, change, trauma, whatever, you can have substantial change and growth. Do you think that we're going through that now as a planet? Do you think that this situation is actually a good scenario where a lot of people are going to go through mini dark night of the souls and then awaken?
I hope so. I hope that is the result. I always love the rune Hagelaz, or Hagar, you know, it's elemental fire, hail, disruption, and it basically says that the greater the chaos, the greater the growth. And I remember when I read runes, and I mean I still read runes, but when I used to really concentrate on runes when I was younger, I used to do them every day to learn about my day, and it was really helpful. It was a really insightful thing to do for me as a young person. But I remember loving that. I loved the idea of like chaos creating growth, because I'd had so much chaos in my life, and I'd never read something that said, hey, this is cool, this is what is good, you know, because you always kind of get told that when you're a bit chaotic or disruptive, or you've lived a life that's a bit different, people judge you because it doesn't fit the norm. But then when this rune used to say like, nah, this is exactly what you want, this is what you want to go for, learn from it. And that helped me a great deal. I think that as a society and a consciousness, now at this moment in time, people are still buying in on the whole to this narrative that's singular. But fortunately, you have alternatives that are burgeoning at the moment. Now, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of like really high level conspiracies, because it's easy to just immediately go, well, that doesn't make sense, that's not true. So, okay, let's just put those to the side. But if you say to yourself, okay, so this disease is one, not actually a pandemic, because it doesn't really fall into the level of pandemic, i.e. the impact and death rate. It doesn't really work in that way. It's like saying that a cold is a pandemic. It's not, it's just the way it is. So if we look at it just in a very literal form, statistically, there's less than 1% of us really are going to die, if that, probably even miles less than that, because we're seeing that people are testing positive in masses that really haven't had even contact, which could mean that
have no symptoms whatsoever.
Existed forever, right? And also, you know, you can't help but say, you know, China is getting really powerful. It's really good to get angry with China a bit. So why don't we just have this whole idea that, well, you ate a bat and that happened, when you actually know that if you do any research on virology, it's just like not going to have happened like that. Like, and people at the moment are so afraid for the people that they love. They've got that tribe feeling, right? So they've got that tribe feeling. So right now, as a protective father, a protective mother, a protective daughter, son, it's completely okay that people are saying, well, you know what? If I don't go out, even if I feel like this isn't real, and even if I'm believing the narrative out there, I'm just gonna put my head down, I'm gonna deal with it. And I respect that. I think that I get that completely. Personally, I would be happy to go about my normal business, doing my normal things, and I've got an old mum, and realistically, you know, she's 78. If she dies, okay, well, she's going to die of something, so that's okay. And we talk about that, and she's very pragmatic. She's like, yeah, it's just like, it's cool. She actually texted me before, and they said that a creaking gate goes on forever. So I think that she thinks that she's like a cockroach, my mother, you know, she'll just survive me. But the reality is that I think that right now it's less of a conscious awakening, it's more of a conscious acceptance that this is what seems to be the right way, because enough people are doing it, and if you say anything negative on social media, they attack you. And then I think in 6 months, when people are traumatized, because now isn't the trauma, it's 6 to 12 months that trauma occurs, then we'll start to see people awakening. And, you know, I said about the fact that we have a Prime Minister in the UK, obviously, who's had coronavirus. Now, listen, I'm sure he's had whatever it is, but what they did in the press, which I understand, because if I was looking for a PR opportunity, I would want to do this, right? He wants to be liked by people. I don't have any feelings of resentment towards him in that way. If you've got a spin, and your spin is I can be fantastic about the NHS, which is bloody amazing, no matter what people are told. The NHS in the UK, it's shit for mental health, but for physical health, it is bang on, right? It is bang on in the UK. You are lucky, we are lucky. So he's getting an opportunity to thank the NHS, which is great. And he's kind of gone, oh, right, I'll spin it a little bit. You know, he wasn't on a ventilator. He wasn't in intensive care, as we know. I've been in intensive care, right? I know that for 3 weeks, I couldn't eat, drink, or do anything, right? I was not walking around eating a sandwich. So if you're going to sell the narrative in the press that says he was in intensive care, he nearly lost his life, it compounds fear. The bigger question that I would ask is, why wouldn't they not coming out and going, listen, guys, NHS is bob on. I wasn't really terribly ill with this, so don't worry. And I'm really well now, so I'm going to have a bit of rest, but I'm fine. Don't worry too much, because that's the right narrative, and that's the true narrative.
Well, but it seems like there's something to gain from the worrying of people, and I'm trying to understand who benefits from the shutdown of the people, which comes from worrying. And it seems like only the big boys are benefiting.
Of course, it's the Vanderbilts, it's the Rothschilds, it's all of that level. Listen, I don't believe for 1 minute that our government is complicit in something that they're aware of at all. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. This isn't about government, you know. That's why Trump's interesting, because he's so rich and doesn't give a shit about what people think about him from that way down. You know, it's been really interesting to me to find out that when Epstein's logs have been looked at, he's pretty much the only one who hasn't been there. That says something significant to me. To find out that he's tried 6,000 child sex traffickers, Obama tried 400, and I loved Obama, right? But, you know, 6,000 to 400, like, there is simply something there that he does not agree with, and it has to do definitely with the way that children are treated in that way. So I think that he's a bit of a loose cannon. In the UK, I hate to say this, I'm so Labour, I'm so not Tories, right? But I don't think that Boris Johnson wants anything but what he thinks is best for people, right? I genuinely think that. You know, I don't agree with him on a lot of his policies. I think things he says about things that are really inappropriate sometimes, but it's just because he's a bit numb in that way. He's like a classic public school boy who's maybe not had the emotional cogency and learned that level, but I don't think he's a bad guy. So even though I would have been for Corbyn, I genuinely don't, and I think he's used this as oh well, that fits the narrative, let's be brilliant about the NHS and talk about me being ill. But the darker forces are Amazon, you know, Facebook, all these, look, all your TV corps, who we all know are owned by like 4 different people, it's Murdoch, etc. God, it's terrifying when you start to explore the controlling of the Western world, the controlling of wars based on oil, the controlling of, you know, any commercial experience because, you know, one country can't get more powerful. You know, whether we like it or otherwise, there's a much bigger voice there, and everyone knows it. Who cares to look? But what the press are really good at doing, and, you know, certainly there are people who don't follow this. You know, you see it on YouTube all the time. You see it with people who are really powerful in the press. You know, they don't come out and stick with the narrative. And that's something that I think is good. I think that social media, even when they close a lot of people down, it still gives us the opportunity to speak our truth. So it's an interesting time. I don't know what this will mean. I don't even know whether it's going to be in my lifetime. Certainly what I've done is I've brought up 2 men, 2 young boys who are teenagers now who do not buy into the status quo. They don't, you know, they see this world in a different way. I hope that that will reflect a new consciousness, definitely. And people like you and the people who follow you, you know, you're not following you because you're thinking, oh yeah, this all makes sense. You're following you because you're like, ask questions, be inquisitive. And even if, the thing is, even if you come to the same conclusion, that's absolutely fine. Because if you just agree after doing the inquisition, that's fine, that's good. But at least do it. At least go on the journey, right? Right.
You know, I mean, in meditation, I'm finding that the best place to be is in a kind of humble inquiry, an unknowing, a curiosity.
Totally. Curiosity is it. Right.
So how, I mean, you know, if the government is not complicit in the shutdown, there is somebody who's benefiting from the shutdown. Is it coincidental they're benefiting from the shutdown, or are they perpetuating this fear so that they can knock out all the little businesses?
Absolutely. Listen, Murdoch could have absolutely told a different narrative. And he will in time, because it'll sell marketing and papers in a bit. But right now, that's the narrative, right? You know, and it works well. Listen, entrepreneurial thought is bad for the big businesses, because entrepreneurial thought often means that people come up with ideas that actually could profoundly shift profit. Money and power is what individuals crave who are in certain positions. You don't get there just because you like what you're doing. You know, listen, Mark Zuckerberg wants to cure all illnesses. Well, I'm sorry, right? The only person who would do that is somebody who considers themselves a demigod. It's as simple as that. Like, I'm the first person to say I would like childhood cancers, etc., to be eradicated, because children deserve a fair shot at life. Right. But the idea that we're going to extend our lives considerably, you're talking about the rich being able to do that, number one.
Right.
So, number one, you're talking about the rich. So number two, that means that the rich don't believe in something else, right? And that's powerful, because if you don't believe in something else, that essentially means that whatever you do on this planet, it stays on this planet, it's done, it's irrelevant. So therefore your actions have no consequences in the long term. So you chase what gives you the most longevity here with the most profit.
It's kind of like the immediate gratification of going onto Pornhub and having a wank.
Exactly that. It's exactly that. That's exactly it. And that's the thing about those people is we know it. You know, we know it. Look, we know about child sexual exploitation. For God's sake, everybody knows. The popes were at it. Our schools were at it. We've had places where 50,000 bodies have been found over time. These are children who are sold and exploited and raped constantly and ritually abused. This isn't something that we're making up. This is something we can evidence. And people are so desensitized to it. It's almost like we've heard the stories so many times in films. We've heard the stories so many times in books that almost your brain's like, oh yeah, I know that. But you're not being present. And that's the bit that we were talking about. You're not being present in that moment and saying, actually, just stop for a minute. Just stop and just think about what that is. Think about children being murdered ritualistically and attacked in the ways that we know have happened and that are happening today. And if you cannot sit and feel the horror of that, then you need to work on the spirit, because that's something we should all be consciously aware of. And without a doubt, you know, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Googles, all of these, they see something good, they buy it. And do you know what the hard bit is? The hard bit is, like, you know, I've been building an app for a good few years now, and it's nearly ready to release, right? And it's a really good app. It's free. It's like health, fitness, well-being. It's completely and utterly free. And it is beautiful on a UX level. So it's going to be lovely. And you sit and you're like, right, okay, you release it. It starts doing well. And then somebody comes in and says to you, oh, here, like, even though it's only just doing a bit okay, we'll give you £1 billion. It's really hard, right, to not go, ooh, what could I do with that £1 billion? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So even as a person who feels awakened, there are these things that try you on a human level. It's that thing about everybody has a price, and people are like, no, I've not got a price. And then they're like 20 million, and you're like, I've got a price. And so, you know, even the most openly conscious person, it's like, are you fooling yourself? And I often think that, I often play with that in my mind. I'm like, you know, I've got a social network that's going to start, that's all about health and fitness. And that means that people can't control what people say on that, because I can let it be.
Right.
And I'm like, but what if the big boys came in? And then how do you manage that as a human being? And how do you go, no, like, this is something I've got to really hold on to, and they can destroy you as well. So you kind of manifest in that issue constantly. It's hard, but that's what we're doing now, isn't it? What I would say about myself and what you would say about yourself is, you know, I know so little. I constantly am learning, and it frustrates me that I know so little, because I want to know so much, but at least I am aware that I know so little, so that I'm constantly searching and seeking. And I know my opinion's just my opinion. I don't think that anybody else should have it, but at least I recognize that I'm trying to figure out how much is what I think, how much is what I've been told, right, and how much I need to relinquish.
Wow, that is a good location. Thank you, Emma, for coming on. What a great chat we've had. It seems obvious from the present that we have a responsibility to the microcosm that's us first.
Yes.
And from there, choosing the output.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Without this notion of, I need to be better, I've got to work towards that, and then I'll be good, because that's the narrative of, it's not good enough now, you're not good enough, you've not got enough money, you've not got this. Instead of resting in the center of self, where it is all already okay.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
Wow. Thanks so much for coming on. Emma, are you seeing clients and stuff online?
I've got to go in a second, yeah, sadly.
No, I mean, but do you see clients online?
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with you?
Just Emma, well, you can go through ekenny.co.uk or any social media platforms. I'm always there, and I answer everybody, so. Perfect.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for coming on, Emma.
I'm going to catch up though and see what Michaela says, because obviously instantly I'm like, oh, I need to know her. All right, take care.
She's wonderful.
Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Emma. Bye.